Okay. I didn't see the announcement on my computer, but we are recording. Did anyone else see that?
I did.
No.
Did?
I thought I did, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I think
Go
I
ahead,
did,
Anara.
yes.
Go ahead, Anara.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I am Anara Tabashaliva, along with co-host Dr. Victor Fett, Dr. Katerina Shrey, and our program producer, Professor Larry Sherray. We host a weekly discussion panel on Russia's war on Ukraine with guests from Ukraine, military experts, medical personnel, academics, artists, literary figures, and relief workers. Our panel is recorded and circulated nationally and internationally. We appreciate your comments and feedback. Special thanks to Marshall University Libraries and MUIT for making this weekly event possible. If you are joining us live on Teams, please feel free to use the chat, post any question for our guest. A quick greetings to our viewers in Ukraine from Dr. Katerina Shrey.
Вітаємо наших слухачів в Україні з глибоким покліном. Ми далі свідки вашого страшного терпіння і також вашої великої сили. Дякую вам за вашу участь в нашій тижневій програмі.
Thank you, Katerina. Today's guest will be introduced by Dr. Victor Fett.
Thank you, Anara. I'm very happy and honored to introduce and welcome back Danish journalist Jens Alstrup, who comes again to us after a year of his incessant work in Ukraine, to this 154th weekly meeting of Ukraine podcast at Marshall University, West Virginia. You can see right here a frame from a newspaper in Danish. And Jens, microphone is yours. Please tell us about your work in Ukraine.
Thank you very much, Victor, and thank you very much, all of you. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be able to tell you about my, I was almost saying adventures, but it's too serious to use that word for it. But then my work here in Ukraine, where I try to do what I can to influence public opinion in Denmark, and to try to channel as much help as possible from Denmark and elsewhere to Ukraine. We are in very difficult times right now. I live in Kiev now. It's quite recent, but I have been so much in Kiev for the last 3 years that yeah, you can almost say that I have lived here during all the war. But now I live here permanently, at least until the war is over. I have many hats. I'm working as a journalist for a small media, online media, POV International. That sounds very big and international, but the international is the content of the media for Danish readers. So it's international news for a Danish audience. And that is per se a rather limited audience. But remember, we are a small country, we Danes, and the media has about 60,000 readers. And I myself personally have about 15,000 followers on Facebook. And our association that collects money and the other donations for the Ukrainian soldiers, we have about 5,000 followers and members. So all in all, we can reach out for about 80,000 people, most of them in Denmark. And that is why we do it in Danish. I'll come back to that later. I am frequently at the front line. I was out there only 2 days ago. Sorry, I was actually out there yesterday. So time flies. And very active out there. I go out there with the soldiers whenever I can. It's very difficult to get the permissions, and the usual way that I get there is actually without permission. So I hope for forgiveness instead of permission sometimes. But there are new things on the way. It seems that I will have an agreement with the 93rd Brigade, which is a very big and very famous brigade here in Ukraine. They are very famous for their heroic fight, and they have a very, very talented commander. He's only 27 years old. That is really something in an army. 27 years and head for more than 4,000 soldiers. It's very impressive. Anyway, I will tell you about the situation here, and I will tell you about one day at the front line as I experienced it. The pictures are from one day. The situation right now, let me start with that. The hotspots are for sure Chasiv Yar and Pokrovsk, those two towns. Nobody knew about them before this war, just like nobody knew about the small villages of Flanders in Belgium before World War I. Ypres, for example, who would know about that before World War I, or unless you were Belgian. So the daily fighting and attacks are really concentrated around Pokrovsk. It's about 50% of all attacks being made only there. So that gives you an idea about how intense it is. And Pokrovsk is a town when it was fully populated of only 12,000 people. So you can imagine half the war in that small spot. It's a horrible place to be. It doesn't get worse in Ukraine right now. The Ukrainians are fighting very well there, but reality is that the numbers of the Russian attacks make the Ukrainian lines retreat slowly, but unfortunately steadily. At Chasiv Yar, it's going even slower, but it's debatable whether Russia has Chasiv Yar now or not. But if they do not have all of Chasiv Yar, then we are talking about few houses controlled by the Ukrainians. And progress by the Russian forces in Chasiv Yar has been like 1-2 houses per week. And it has been absolutely a slaughterhouse for 1.5 years. A good friend of mine, a Dane who volunteered, has been there for 1.5 years, and he is surely not the same person as when I met him before he went to Ukraine. People cannot, they break, they simply break. It's not possible to continue being yourself after such experiences. I myself got permission to go with a drone unit to Pokrovsk, and it's a tactical drone unit. That means that I had to accept going to the front line 2,000 to 2,500 meters from the nearest Russian position. If a drone unit is recognized by UAVs or by other technical means, they will have absolutely top priority because they're specialists. Everybody wants to hit a drone unit and destroy it. So it is a dangerous unit to go with, also because it's so close. Another thing is, because you surely have heard about drones, the air is absolutely thick of drones. there are countermeasures, especially electronic jamming, and at the moment it's about 90% of the drones, the so-called FPV drones or kamikaze drones, that do not hit their target because they're jammed in some way or another before they reach the target. The remaining 10% as average, they hit the target. It's still good value for money, if you can say it that way. I mean, it's not a second-hand car we are talking about here. It's human lives. But the cruel reality of war is that you look at what is the price for getting a certain number of enemy soldiers. And that is the horrible math behind this war. Any war, actually. You cannot win it with heroism. Well, you can, but then you must finish it at least during the first weeks of the war. If it starts to be a grinding process going for a long, long time, and it has been going on for very soon 3 years, then it's a question about numbers. And the numbers are, unfortunately, in the favor of Russia, unless the West gear up significantly in the arms, in the support for Ukraine measured in arms. It is possible for the West to do it. It's not lost yet, but we can see in the horizon the day of no return. That is why it is paramount that the West not only keep up the support, but increase the support of Ukraine. And as you know, especially you in Virginia, I mean all over America, knows Donald Trump was elected, and what he wants to do with Ukraine, or what kind of deal he wants to make with Putin, I'm not sure he even knows it himself. But I fear the worst. I also hope for the best. I mean, we could be in a situation that Trump wakes up tomorrow and gets very angry with Putin and gives Ukraine everything, and then it will be good. It is possible. Where Biden, he didn't give what was needed, but at least he was reliable. He wouldn't put Ukraine under the bus right away. That is also an option with Trump. So it's horrible that we don't know, and I can feel it among the Ukrainians. They actually had some hopes for Trump when he was elected, but I think even the most optimistic Ukrainians are beginning to worry that it will not work well. So that is the situation regarding the morale here. I also must say that there is no feeling of victory at the moment. You can find online specialists looking for public source information and making analysis on the war. And some of them are very optimistic. And we have this old story about Russian economy breaking totally down next week. But it has been next week for 2.5 years now. And it's still not breaking down. Yes, Russia has a lot of problems, no doubt about that. There are hidden figures about inflation and other things. Yes, their BNP increases, but if you produce a lot of military equipment, put it to the front line, getting it destroyed, send out more equipment, that's good for your broad national product. So on paper, that is good for economy, but of course not in reality. So you can make many interpretations, and Putin, of course, look on the turnover on the national budget, and that is of course big because so much money is used at the war. I am pessimistic because Putin has a very firm grip of power in Russia. I have no contact anymore with people I knew from Russia, from my many journeys there. The only Russians I know today, or I mean that I have contact with, are Russians in exile. And there I have, for example, a good friend from Novaya Gazeta, which is a very familiar name of media among Russians, of course. And they got the Nobel Prize. So they are very famous. That's general about the situation. There's also another thing I think I should mention, and that is about deserters. There have been some articles about deserting soldiers, and they are in very high numbers, and that is correct. There are many deserters, and at the moment it's on an extraordinary high number. But you know, the devil is hidden in the details. First of all, the number of deserters is very high on both sides of the front line. And when you look at the organization in Russia that help Russian deserters, and if we rely on the numbers they have, it is fair to say that the numbers of deserters on both sides are equal compared, or what's it called, compensated by the number of, or the size of their armies, meaning that the Russian number of deserters is much higher than the Ukrainian numbers, but the Ukrainian army is also smaller. So if you take it in percent, they are approximately the same. Of course, this is something I say based on information that is difficult to confirm for sure or with certainty. And why it has increased on the Ukrainian side lately is because of a new law. The new law says that if you desert your post, when you are registered as a deserter, you can go on your military app on your phone and you can check in and say, I want to get back, and I want to get back to another unit. Then the military will say, yes, you can come back, no penalty because you go back on your own will, and we will move you to another unit, and they will not be told that you were a deserter. Compare that with the situation of the infantry. The soldier as infantry is in a situation where there is no end to the horrible situation, because that is where you get killed, because they are in the very front of it all. And the commanders make no rotation because the commanders always need infantry. Nobody wants to go for the infantry because it's a death on Russian side, because it's same situation both places. Except that here you can actually desert, get away from it a few days and not being caught in those few days, and then you can put yourself in again, and then you are out of being infantry. That is the way to do it if you want to get out. And can I condemn infantry after 3 years making this trick? No, I can't. Probably you all know the movie Memphis Bill. Going as a bomber pilot in World War II was something where you didn't survive, basically, after some numbers of missions. So the British and the Americans copied it, had the rule that after 16 missions, you were free to go home. Actually, not home, but your job from then on would be to educate new crews. and that would pull you out of the heat of the fighting. There should obviously be something like that for the infantry here to countermeasure this, so people know that there is a way out, and when they accomplish this, they are home safe, at least relatively. But that's not how it is. Just to make this explanation. So many of the deserters are not deserting because they want to go away from the war. They are deserting because they want to get away from being infantry. That's the explanation. So I got permission to go to the front line. And first I went in my car to Kramatorsk. I slept with the soldiers in Droshkivka, which is close to Kramatorsk. And from there, I went to the drone unit in Kramatorsk next morning. And I went with the drone people to their base, not far from Pokrovsk, but outside drone range. From that base, I went in a car where we had the protection vests and helmet and everything on, and we were driving as fast as the chauffeur dared, because we did not have a jammer on the roof. And going in daytime into Pokrovsk without a jammer is absolutely unadvisable. It is close to stupidity, but they wanted to put me in, and therefore they had to do it in day hours, and when I should get out, they didn't want to repeat it, so I went out with the soldiers in usual rotation, meaning that the driving out of Pokrovsk again with the drone guys, where they had new crew delivered, was when it was so dark that daylight drones didn't work probably, and so early that the thermal drones did not work satisfyingly yet. So that is the time frame where a car without a jammer can go. When we got food in the middle of the day, it was delivered by a car with a jammer, because they they would not last for long if they delivered food in day hours without the jammer. Just to tell you about the situation of transport. Because of this situation with the drones, often they have to give up rotating people and leave the present crew stay at the position. A very good friend of mine just before Christmas had to stay in the trenches for 36 days non-stop. It's absolutely inhuman. And I felt so bad about it because he is a very good friend. Yeah, what can I say? It's such a bad thing. I went out to the drone people. The first day I used to know them, to see how did they work, not so much to interview them, not so much to make pictures and so on. I did a little, but not so much, just to follow them, to get it under my skin, so to speak. In the evening, we went to sleep because this team did not have thermal drones, so they could not operate at night. So we had the night for ourselves, and then we slept. Regarding being so close to the Russian line, I can tell you we had about 4 to 5 explosions in the neighborhood close to us, from typically mortars, but also artillery. 4 to 5 explosions per hour as average. That is how it was in this small sector. And there are sectors where it's even more intensive than that. There was also a lot of outgoing artillery, and that, of course, was not very problematic for us because that was the Ukrainian artillery shooting at the other side. Next morning, the dog, a stray dog, no, not really a stray dog, but one of the many dogs left behind by the locals who had to leave their homes, and there was not space for their animals, and they had to leave their dogs behind, hoping that the soldiers will take care of them. And it's the only war I know where pets play a significant part of the war, and the soldiers do help them. So that's a very nice. It's maybe not so good a word, but it's a comforting part of the situation here. So they woke up, they switched on the generator to recharge the power station. They switched on the computers, went online via Starlink, opened the different apps, getting connected to the infantry units, surveillance drones, and waiting for the first call. They also used time preparing FPV drones, meaning that they put freshly charged batteries on them, put on explosives on them, and made it ready. So they were in a line. A unit like this, in this case, they dropped about 15 drones per day. A really good unit in the trenches. We were not in the trenches, we were in town, meaning that we had to walk with the drones for some distance to put it off from ground. And that distance delayed it, so therefore only about 15 drones per hour. But a very good unit can use up to 60 drones a day. And that is, of course, if they have that number of drones. Most of them don't. And this unit I was with could certainly send off more than 15 a day, but because they were where they were, maybe something like 25 to 30 would be maximum a day. But they did not have that many of them. Try to go to next step. Before you go to next picture, we were then asked to go to the White House in the middle and bomb it, because there was a position of Russian snipers there shooting at the Ukrainian infantry. And when we get a call, I say we, but when the drone unit gets this call, there should be maximum 10 minutes from the call to the drone actually hit the house. That is the time we have to do with. So now next picture. Yes, there you see how we prepare it in the morning. Things are getting online on the screen. It's dark all day, by the way, because there are no windows. You can see the wood to protect against the blasts, so we will not get glass inside the position. Go next picture. Yeah, and there you see the dog. And next again. Yes, and here you see the drones being prepared. And they prepared, I think it was about 10 of them, and then they prepared some extra during the day. Let's see next again. Yes. After we got the message that the infantry wanted help against this sniper position. One of the prepared drone was taken out to a ramp. It's actually an A sign. You know the A signs from shops on the street. Here we have offer today on potatoes or whatever. In this case, it was a shop, and there was address and everything on it, so I could not take photo from that angle. So I had to move the angle as it is because Russians also read my news. And I mean, when I say Russians, I mean, of course, the Russians on the active side in the war, because there are many good Russians who try to help Ukraine as well and as good as they can. Actually, I was with the volunteer Russians at the front line some days ago, visiting them and giving them supplies. I should have been with them on active mission after having been with this drone unit, but the tragedy of the day was that when I was driving to meet them, I was told that they simply didn't exist anymore. They were hit by a drone. One was killed, one was severely wounded, one was wounded, and two others were more or less in shock. And therefore there would be no mission at all. But for the survivors, I will go with them on a mission later when I'm back in March, because I go home to Denmark here very soon. Here the drone, the FPV drone is prepared. It's put on the sign. There is a cable connected, and this cable is pulled off when the drone flies. And when the cable is off, the switch is on and the explosives will be active. And it's not a good idea to stay close to it because it's unstable. It could drop by coincidence and then it will explode. But I had to stay with it in order to have the picture of it. So I stayed. But when I had one picture, I said that was enough. Next picture, I think that is the drone flying. No, that is how the drone is controlled, where the drone pilot with VR glasses fly the drone. You can see on the computer monitor, there you can see the picture he has in his glasses. Let's have the next one. Yes, this is the communication drone because the range of the communication for the drones is not very long, the range of it. So therefore, they put a relay up on a big agriculture drone, and that is the communication relay controlling the FPV drones flying into enemy land. That one is easy to take pictures of because it's stationary in the air while the mission is going on. So let's have the next one. Yes, here you see the FPV drone. It looks like a mess. They are very ugly, and first time you see them, you think that cannot be, because they are cables and different things, small boxes and components everywhere on it. And what if it's raining? It cannot work then, you think, but it can. And well, it works. And there's no need to make it better looking than this. The price of such a drone today is less than $200. You should compare that with an artillery grenade. The price of that is between $3,000 and $5,000. So when I told you that 90% of the drones do not hit the target, we are still talking about hitting a target for the price of $2,000. That is extremely cheap compared with artillery grenades. So when you hear that the war is won now because Russia do not have artillery grenades or not have artillery at all, first of all, they still do. And yes, it's right that Russia has lost a lot of artillery. Unfortunately, the truth is that it is the Russians that, at the moment at least, has the upper hand when we are talking about drones. So when you hear about the artillery factor, that means that Russia is losing the war. It's not correct. It's simply not correct. Because what determines the war right now is drones. So let's have the next. Yeah, there you see the FPV drones going against the target. I think this one didn't hit. We had to use 4 drones in order to hit the sniper position. First drone was scrambled by a jammer from a Ukrainian car passing the street when we sent this drone off. And there is no discrimination on jamming. Also, Ukraine's own drones drop down. And the time you have from you are jammed until you have lost the drone is not even 1 second. You, as a drone pilot, you have to react extremely fast if you are so lucky that you get back your signal before it hits the ground. And immediately when it hits the ground, it will explode. And from there is no recovery, of course. So even if it's a friendly drone and you see it in the air, you really should keep away from it because you never know what will happen. And it was, if it was just for fun, for my own pleasure, it would be absolutely idiotic of me taking this picture. But in this case, I think it had a purpose. So let's have the next one. Yeah, here you have the navigator close to the pilot, and he uses ordinary Google Map with satellite pictures and follow that, compare it with the observation drone from the infantry, and those two compared, then he give guidance to the drone pilot who guide his drone onto the target. And then when he sees the target, the drone pilot take over completely. And it's a question about trying to get close to the target where the target is not able to use a mobile jammer to jam the drone, and then it's a complete loss. We lost 2 drones where they succeeded to jam the drones here, but the 4th one was the lucky one for Ukraine and absolutely the unlucky one for the Russian position. The drone pilot at one time said, "I am amazed that I love killing people." And then he got kind of scared that he said it, because he's absolutely not a man who loves to kill anything or anyone. But reality is that it's kind of a computer game. You see all this on a small screen. You don't see the people's faces for real. Well, actually, you do that from time to time. You probably have seen it on YouTube and Facebook and other places, TikTok. But in general, it is a kind of computer game, but also a very serious one, and that is what he meant. So he didn't like killing people, but you get involved in the hunting, like the Red Baron in his fighter plane in World War I, or the famous bomber pilots from World War II. And you probably also remember, many of you, from Desert Storm, first Iraqi war, which was the first electronic war where we could follow missiles and planes and so on online on video. And now even a small infantry unit has these types of technologies where they can put it on online on Facebook and so on. You can sometimes follow it online as they do it, sitting at home in your living room. It's really strange experience. So let's have the next one. Yeah, there are no more. Okay, but it ended that we hit the target, and then mission was over. Later in the day, we were collected, And I went back to the base together with the drone team. And from there, I went back to Kramatorsk in my own car, by the way, together with the drone pilot, because they didn't have room in the car, so they needed an extra seat. And of course, I took him with me. By the way, about being part of this war or not, I never use press sign on me. First of all, I don't think it gives real protection. But second, I help the Ukrainian soldiers. I send supplies to them. I am a combatant, although not I'm not shooting anyone, but I am actively working to help the Ukrainian army, and therefore I am not entitled to wear this sign, and I don't. But it also means that when a soldier needs a lift or something like that, I can easily do it. I don't need to think about that. And that is because I'm also an activist, and my readers know it. It's absolutely in the public that this is how things are. When I was at the base, I was introduced to their newest recruit, 21 years old. He was something like 2 meters high. He was a very high guy. And I cannot help, he was volunteer because if he was drafted, he would be minimum 25 years at the moment. So he was a volunteer. But I could see at him how scared he was. And I felt so sorry. I really, because he should be at a university. He should kiss his fiance in the night. Have a nice time as you have it when you are young and student, or whatever you are doing, working on your first job, whatever. We can't be student, all of us. And yes, and he volunteered, and still he was afraid, and I understand that very much. I can guarantee you I was afraid first time I went to the front line back in 2017, and I still feel afraid when I go there. And if I did not feel afraid, my chances for survival would be very low, because you must be afraid. Otherwise, you do not react as you should. But it makes me angry when I see it, because this war should not have been here at all. About a danger, I told you about the explosions all the time, 4 or 5 per hour, but nothing was close. The irony was, when I was back in relative safety in Kramatorsk, I really got a big one very, very close. The hotel, the building, my bed, everything jumped, and the explosion was very high. A German journalist at the hotel, he was told a lot about security in the evening when he arrived. I heard it, but I was thinking and a bit joking for myself, well, I could have done that much faster simply by saying to him, there is no security here. You take the bomb or you don't take the bomb, and you can do nothing about it. And well, I was in my bed at that time when the explosion was there, and I reasoned, well, I heard the explosion, I'm still here, I'm still in my bed, the windows are intact, so it's not dangerous anymore. It's the explosions you have not heard which are the dangerous ones. But you need some experience to get to that point, of course. And there are people who never get to that point because they continue to being scared. And I cannot promise that I will not be really scared tomorrow if I have a new experience. You never know when you reach your limit. And I feel very humble for it. I could never, ever make fun of a guy or a woman who gets afraid for the bombing. It's only a natural instinct. Of course it is. So that was, I went a little over my planned time, but we still have time for questions. So that was the story of one day at the front line.
Thank you so much, Jens. This was absolutely moving, and I already have a question from our regular viewer, Dr. Leonard Deutsch, please.
I have some interrelated questions. How far have the North Korean troops penetrated into Ukraine? About 10,000 or so of them. And I don't think any European countries have committed regular troops, but you've talked about volunteers who have come in. Aside from Russia, where else have they come from? How many have you met? What percentage of the Ukrainian army consists of these volunteers?
When it comes to numbers, there is a lot of secrecy about it. So I don't know the numbers. I also must honestly say that the few numbers I know, I'm not allowed to tell you about it. But let me tell you so I will answer your question, so but just qualifying what I'm going to tell you and how you can use it. North Koreans, let me start with that. It seems that the North Koreans have been pulled out. They had enormous losses, enormous losses. It's something, depending on who you hear. There have been said that about 50% of them are lost. There was another figure saying it was 30%. Maybe both numbers are right. The 30% were the ones killed, 50% were the ones killed and the ones wounded in a way that they will never be soldiers again. So both can be correct, and in any case, that would be losses. And they have been pulled out, at least for now. We will see, maybe they will come back again. They were not inside Ukraine, also important to say. They were fighting in the Kursk region, which is Russia, and also by Ukraine recognized as Russia, important to mention too. Then about volunteers on the other side. And by the way, there are also Africans, there are different nationalities. I think there was also an American being volunteer in the Russian army. Yeah, there was actually one, but I mean, out of the plus 300 million Americans, one is not a lot. So peace with that. On the Ukrainian side, one nationality that surprised me is that there is a very large number, I mean, compared with how many volunteers there is here in general. There is a large number of Colombians. The reason is very simple. They earn a lot of money compared with what they can earn in the Colombian army back home. Some of them are also very supportive for Ukraine. I find it a little difficult why they are that so far away, but they are, and they are very loyal soldiers. They fight very good. My Danish friend is actually training them, and he loves using my guest room here in Kiev when I'm here, because he prefers being in my guest room instead of being in a big room with about 100 snoring Colombians. So that's a fun fact. How many there are of volunteers from other nations? Again, it's numbers I don't know. I know about the Danes. It's not a lot. And compared with how many it was when the war started, it's less than 20% left in numbers now. But also some of those who volunteered at the beginning of the war were a liability even for Ukraine. So they were sent back home. After half a year, they didn't extend the contract and said, bye-bye, please go home, we don't need you anymore. They said it in a more polite way, of course. But that was the message. There are quite some British here. There are also, and that is what you implied in your question, soldiers here who are not volunteers. who are specialists, for example, technicians on Storm Shadow. Olaf Scholz, the German chancellor, was so friendly that he told that in public. And in Downing Street 10, they needed the fire extinguishers in order to calm down the prime minister of anger against the German chancellor when he told that. Naturally, there is a need for technicians for special types of weapons. But again, in the numbers, it's very, very few. We are actually working on a project, and it is a project in public. It's not something secret. That's the very point of it. We hope to get state funding in order to get volunteers to a unit at the front line to support a regular brigade of the Ukrainian army. And the ones we are working together with is the 93rd Brigade, which is very famous. So I hope it answered your question.
Very, very interesting. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Deutsch. Thank you, Jens. We have time for more questions, please, from panel or viewers. We have enough people here. Some I don't even know. Please open your microphone and camera if you ask questions. Please, Yefim, glad to see you. Yefim Somin,
thank you.
please.
Thank you very much for a very unique report here from the front line. My question is a slightly different angle, actually. I expect to be in Denmark in April, and I wonder if you can just briefly comment on the mood and the attitude in Denmark towards Putin taking over Ukraine, and just maybe along the way, Trump taking over Greenland.
Oh, yeah. I must say that I had one evening where I actually cried, because literally cried with tears running, because I feel that this could be the end of Western civilization as we know it. Europe has not proved the will to fight for our Western society. I'm not saying that the West is perfect. We are not. Just look at the period of the colonial time, awful things we did. But compared with other ages, compared with other civilizations, we have, especially today, we behave better than our predecessors. And at least we try to do good. But now it has become like a big virtual real estate thing, the whole globe, for Mr. Trump. And he wants Greenland. I mean, he wants Greenland from an ally who has been very, very reliable to America. Yes, we did not use the 2%. We use the 2% now and more. We are willing to do even more. If the US want more bases on Greenland, please do that. We will be happy to give all the facilities. But this is a strange demand. It almost sounds like what Putin is saying to Ukraine before the war. And that makes things very, very strange, how good friends suddenly can do that against old allies.
With respect to Ukraine, though, maybe you can comment a couple of words. What Denmark, where the Danish people stand there right now.
We are very supportive of Ukraine. Per capita, we are the biggest supporter of Ukraine. In absolute numbers, small Denmark is number 4. We are bigger than France in our donations to Ukraine. So it is very big in Denmark. And our Prime Minister is absolutely supportive at Ukraine. And there is a public support for it. And I can say that my work as activist has been not the only part, but it has been a part to reckon with in that process.
Tak.
You're welcome.
Tak, thank you. Thank you, Efim. Thank you. Jens, more questions, please, from us. It is a rare opportunity for us. We very rarely have people from Frontlines for obvious reasons, and you're one of the most famous. We're so proud to give this platform. We really hope that this recording will circulate. Our circulation depends purely on our speakers. Anara, please.
I am really impressed by your presence there. Also, your analysis. I think it's a just amazing job. And of course, you're an expert number one who should advise what could be done, because you see grant level situation. What might be your recommendation for Trump administration, for Zelensky administration, and for Russian administration? What do you think about this? And of course, for the UN organizations, because they have different understanding, different strategies. But as a person who saw the real war, what you may actually recommend? Thank you.
Oh, there is no one single trick to cure it all. It will be, we have two scenarios, one with America, one without America. Let us take the optimistic one, that Trump still supports Ukraine, and there's still a flow of weapons and money going from the US to support Ukraine. Especially Europe should give more. There are European countries not giving very much to Ukraine. And we should also be sure that we get value for money. And we do not get that at the moment. We have so many artillery systems, so many different models of tanks. And by the way, tanks is not really the weapon of today anymore, because you have a $60 million tank and you have drones for the $1,000, and then you destroy the tank. It's really bad. We also have the situation, well, we also have a situation where Air Force is still very important. It's not paramount anymore. That is a new thing. If you control the air completely, like in Desert Storm, you were unbeatable. Today, Russia really controls the airspace until the front line, but not after the front line, because of ground-to-air missile systems. But what kills a lot of Ukrainian soldiers and what penetrate Ukrainian defensive position is the glide bombs. And these glide bombs, they can be up to 3 tons. Those very big ones are used against civilians in Kharkiv. The lighter one, 1 ton, half a ton, and 250 kilograms, they are used at the front line against Ukrainian positions. I had the very bad experience of having a 1-ton glide bomb very close to me, and I saw soldiers being killed in that process, and it was a horrible experience. And the flames, the inferno was difficult to describe. And there was the shock wave. It was very hot. And I and my Ukrainian friend, we ran inside the house in order not to get debris down from the explosion. So that close it was. So Air Force is still very important, and we have good news there. Netherlands delivered some new F-16s yesterday. A few days ago, France delivered Mirage 2000. So the Ukrainian Air Force is building up, and it seems that plans are that Ukraine should have about 200 active fighter planes, and that should be enough to regain dominance in the air over the front line. But it will take time. It will not be at the very, very earliest. It will be the last days of this year when it's on full scale. Another thing is to produce a lot of ammunition, a lot of it. And Europe should build new factories. But it's we have used 3 years now not building factories. So it is very sad to see how inactive we have been, but we can still do it. We still have the window of opportunity. But even if we pull ourselves together, and even Europe alone can do it, it is possible, but of course it will be more difficult for Europe than it would be together with the USA. But we don't know how it will be with Trump. That is the tragedy. And regarding United Nations, I think it's I think it will not have a serious part in the war now because Trump is pulling out. Is putting America out of the United Nations, and the US was one of the 3 nations, 4 if you include France, that made the United Nations. It's so strange to see this. Yeah, I'm happy my mother does not experience this. She would have been flabbergasted.
Thank you, Jens. We have a question from our Danish viewer. Tony, please. Great to hear you from Denmark.
Yeah. Hi, Jens.
Hi.
Hi. As you know, I work as a volunteer coordinator for a club of Ukrainian refugees here in Copenhagen. And as Nina, my wife, described when she was giving the presentation back in December, about 10 to 15% of Ukrainian refugees have left the country, and many of them have gone back. Many of that proportionality, 10 to 15%, have gone back to Ukraine out of desperation, due to their conditions, living in a small room with 3-4 kids and father at home, or because they want to go back and join their parents and so on. Have you any stories? Have you met any of those Ukrainians who have lived in Denmark so far and have now come back to Ukraine?
No, I don't have enough time as things are already now. I have to limit myself. I hear about it, I follow it from a statistical point of view, which is not the same as meeting the actual humans behind the numbers. I know that. But a very good friend of mine is working in the UNHCR, helping refugees inside Ukraine. And it is correct, there was a flow back, even back to Kramatorsk and Kharkiv, meaning back to the war zone towns and cities. But if you take Kharkiv, and also Kramatorsk, by the way, the flow has returned again now. People are beginning to flee the towns and cities again because there are. I slept one night in Kharkiv and there was 15 air raid alarms. 15 in one night. And all of them were glide bombs where it was push messages on your phone. You could not switch it off at all, even if you wanted to. Well, you could switch off the phone completely, but that was the only option you had to avoid them. 15. And if that doesn't scare people, I don't know. Yeah, well, at the same time, I was not so scared because I was coming in from the front line. So, yeah, I had worse. But still, it's especially if you have children. I have seen it was an S300, which is a very small device, regarding explosives. It's about 30 kilograms. It's enough to kill you, of course. If it hits you directly, there's no chance you will survive it. But it hit a big building with flats. And I saw the people standing outside on the road, looking up at their homes, where it was destroyed for part of the building, but no structural damages on it. So I think they, within time, could move back. But would you move back to such a flat? Wouldn't you say, no, enough is enough? I go to Kiev, I go to Uzhhorod, I go to Lviv, or I go to Germany or Denmark or whatever. I understand people trying to move away. And the very big glide bombs, even if you are in the basement, you will not survive them. You cannot hide for them. They are too big. And that's also the soldiers. Even the soldiers are scared of them. They really hate them. And you really see soldiers having psychological damage from them, because they are, yeah, I should use the bad F word, scared of them. With good reason.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jens. We are nearing the end of our hour, and I have a comment from our moderator, Dr. Katerina Schrey. Please, Katerina.
We can't thank you enough for what you're doing and the heart with which you do it. Especially grateful for how you describe the situation of deserters with such empathy and understanding, and helping us to understand this as well. The story of your friend who was in the trenches for 36 days, it's unthinkable. It's unbearable. And your description of the young man that you ran into, 2 meters young. I have a son who's 22 meters tall. I cannot, I'm fighting back tears. I can't imagine what you go through on a daily basis, seeing all this horror. You mentioned something that was really quite brilliant. The practice of, after 16 missions, reassigning infantry to education, to other positions. Is there any chance something like this would be possible? Are there enough soldiers to do this? Is this something, and if so, like, how would one go about suggesting that? I mean, surely the Ukrainian government has thought of this, and if not, it sounds very humane and merciful in what are impossible and unbearable circumstances. So thank you for sharing. You've educated us a lot about the mechanics of drones, the role that pets play. You're so right. This is so strange. And no other war have pets taken such front and center attention. And I remember one of our guests in a previous program said, we save the animals to preserve our humanity in human situations. It's the one thing we can do. So thank you for everything you shared. But I do wonder if there's any way that idea of a certain number of rotations, and you don't have to be, you have hope to go home or go away from the horror. What are your thoughts on that? How can that happen?
They need to have better management of recruitment. And they need to make sure that there is no way of paying out of recruitment to make it, I wouldn't say popular, but at least not so much hated. I have seen young men being taken from the street by the military, sent directly to recruitment. Actually, a very, very good friend. He is fluent in 5 languages. He's a linguist. He is a chess master. He has a science of politics, and he doesn't know how to do his shoelashes, because practically he's the least practical guy I know in the whole world, and he was taken as a soldier, and I fear the very worst for it, because he has no chance in the trenches. So it was 2 days after Christmas evening. I celebrated Christmas with him here in my home in Kiev. So it was not a nice Christmas present. I wept so many tears, and I can still get very, very emotional on it. But they need to start somewhere, at least, to take out the most psychologically hurt soldiers and rotate those. But I also understand, because we must understand, without the infantry, there is no Ukraine. It is the survival of the country that depends on it. And they have to be harsh on it. But at least to give them some hope would be good. I know with the unit, I know very, very well in Pokrovsk, they are not there anymore. That's actually a sign of that they try to do some rotation. But they had very, very hard losses at Pokrovsk late last summer. And then they were relieved by a new unit, but the new unit was so badly educated that they could not switch. Even both units being there, they were still on the retreat. So my friends could not get out because it would destroy your front line. And they had to stay there. But then finally they came with new units and they could get out, not out of fighting, but out of this hill with the name of Pokrovsk. And they are now fighting not so far from Soledar and Kramatorsk. Soledar is controlled by Russia, Kramatorsk is by Ukrainian control, and it's in the middle of those two they are fighting now. And that's not a good place, but it's a better place. Yeah, but they have to start. I think that it's needed. Soldiers cannot survive this mentally for 3 years. It's not possible.
Thank you. I don't know what to say other than thank you, and not just for what you're doing to support Ukraine's fight for its survival, but also this reporting and honestly the kindness and the humanity with which you express all this. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I second this, and from all of us, thank you again for spending this hour with us, and we just are amazed by what you are doing and reporting. We hope for the best in this hour, and we remind our viewers that it will be very soon 3 years of Ukraine's fight, and we will be here every Friday. I will ask Dr. Shrey to say our Ukrainian greeting to our viewers, please.
Jans, please stay safe. Дорогі браття і сестри в Україні, ми зберігаємо вас у наших щоденних думках і молитвах. Нехай милосердний Бог тримає вас у своїй опіці. До наступного тижня. Прощаємося.
Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Героям слава!